What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Slate Thursday Sports Edition. Adam Kaufman, Gary and Thorne, and for the first time working with me on this show anyway. I know he's been here before, but Jeff Pratt, welcome, friend. It's good to see you. We are going to bounce around, do a whole lot of different stuff. NFL, obviously, it's draft night, but also, if you missed it, some pretty big news coming across the gridiron moments ago, or I don't know, hour ago. And then, of course, there's the one NBA game tonight. Could be a big one, Celtics and Hawks. And if we are feeling bold, some baseball, some playoff hockey as well. But guys, how are you?
Don't think we're gonna get to playoff hockey. That's just my guess. But,
we'll just FaceTime Ulrich in. I'll put him on my phone, just pop him up like this.
I've actually watched 3.5 of the Leafs games so far, so I probably know more about hockey than I have in 20 years at this exact moment.
If they weren't playing well in this series, would that number be like 1.5? Like, what would the over under be in terms of your viewership if the team was struggling?
Oh, I don't care if they're good or bad. I just happened to watch game 2 and they won, and then all of my Leaf friends are superstitious for some reason. Who knows why? So now I'm stuck watching them every single game until they lose.
How are we feeling about the NFL draft tonight? Let's jump into it, because I know the three of us, like, spoiler alert to anybody watching, the three of us are not huge NFL draft guys, so we're not going to, a big part of it too is if you've been watching DraftKings programming, be it the Slate or the Sweat, over the past several days this week, or even the last couple of weeks, you know that you're kind of, unless you've got like some inside information, you're a little late to the game in terms of getting any sort of edge or advantage for betting. That time has passed. It has already happened, short of some sort of, again, like late breaking news that just disrupts the whole machine. We've seen sort of the nonsense, like the like Reddit posts screwing everything up. Like, if we want to share the screen, we can show you what the odds are looking like for the number one pick in the draft. Like Will Levis breaking, not number one right now. He's plus 1,200 though, which is still probably way higher than anybody expected him to be sitting. But we're still talking Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. What are you thinking right now, Jeff, in terms of what this is going to look like? Is this going to be dramatic tonight, or do you sort of feel like you know how the first couple of picks are going to unfold?
I think this is going to be dramatic. I mean, outside of Bryce Young to Carolina, which is a formality at this point, it really feels like this could be the most uncertain we felt about a draft in years heading into it. Now, obviously, I remember the Baker draft. He went number 1 overall, and that news broke, I think, the morning of that draft, maybe something like that. It kind of came out of nowhere. People weren't really sure where it was going to go. But that being said, we know the number 1 pick. We have no idea what's going to happen after that. Obviously, Houston is going to play a huge role in that, whether they trade down. We know that teams have been talking to them. We understand that maybe they could take a quarterback. They could go defense. If they go defense, is it Will Anderson? Is it Tyree Wilson? Where do they go from there? Do they shock everyone and take a corner out of everything? So the draft really starts at 2. In terms of betting it at this point, as you said, Koff, I'm not a huge NFL draft guy, but I've been doing our research over the last couple of weeks. I've been listening to the guys in the Sweat. They did their mock draft yesterday. The one thing I do like is picking a specific team to draft Bijan Robinson. If you go to his market, Atlanta, I believe, is still the favorite right now at plus 150, picking 8th. I can see how those dots could be connected, but I also think Tyler Algier was more than serviceable last year, and they also have other holes to fill on that roster. So let's say he makes it past Atlanta at 8, just pulling up his market. I think you can bet on both the Bears at plus 500 and the Eagles at plus 300 to take him. Those are the next 2 teams up, and I would be pretty surprised if he slips past them. Chicago obviously only has Khalil Herbert after letting David Montgomery walk. The Eagles let Miles Sanders do the same. Philly seems like rock bottom for him, and it's not rock bottom whatsoever. It's the 10th overall pick, but their roster is so complete. What they really need is an elite playmaker at running back. So I would feel pretty comfortable that if he slips past Atlanta, one of those 2 are going to take him. But outside of Bijan, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Would you, I don't know, feel compelled, as opposed to trying to draft the order, obviously, and nail that? So few people do, as we know. Would you maybe feel compelled to attempt to draft a such and such team is going to target this position, or this guy's going to go in this range, that type of thing?
I was looking at it earlier. Nothing immediately jumped out to me. I do think the New England Patriots to take an offensive tackle plus 225 last time I checked made sense.
Where's the Bill Belichick to trade out of the first?
Yeah, exactly.
That option.
Trading out. I mean, that would probably be what, minus 350, something like that at this point. But if Bill does stick around, we know there's going to be a number of tackles in that range. Obviously, Broderick, you've got Darnell Wright, you've got Peter Skoronski if he could fall a little bit. There's definitely some players who could be available. I've understood that the Patriots might be high on a corner like a Devin Witherspoon if he falls, Joey Porter Jr. Obviously, there's the connections to a receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba. We know that the Zay Flowers connection is there. He's met with them somewhat consistently throughout the pre-draft process. But, you look at the moves that New England made this offseason in terms of free agent acquisitions. Yes, they shored up the tackle depth a little bit, but they are still looking for someone to step in and be a franchise tackle. And they just don't have that guy on the roster right now, really on either ends of the line. So I think that the Patriots to take an offensive lineman makes a lot of sense, assuming they're sticking around.
I was reading this post on Twitter. Our guy Shirag actually sent me, and it's from this. What are his affiliations? This guy, host of the Fresh Fantasy podcast. He's a contributor to Fantasy Pros as well. Alex Caruso, not that Alex Caruso. Posted the secret to predicting the top 10 NFL draft picks tonight is pre-draft meetings. 85% of the top 10 draft picks since 2021 had a pre-draft meeting with their team, while 80% of those top 10 picks had an official top 30 visit. So, and then proceeds to break down the top 10. For instance, I'll just give you the second pick because, as you mentioned, that's something that's in question. Second pick, Texans met with Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Hendon Hooker, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson. The top 30 visits were Young, Stroud, Hooker, and Wilson. Therefore, Tyree Wilson is the betting, or also noting Tyree Wilson is the betting odds favorite for this pick at plus 130. And it goes on from there. Third pick, fourth pick, fifth pick, just like who met with who and where they ranked and all of that stuff. And I guess it just kind of always amazes me, guys, how analytical this whole process is in an effort to very simply guess which team is going to take who at what spot, Carrion.
I mean, to a certain extent, it's just like a lot of trends in betting. I would say it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of finding stats that fit your particular narrative. I mean, look, I don't want to disparage this guy's numbers, but at the same time, if you're telling me it's very likely a team picking number 2 is going to pick someone that they had a meeting with and they met with 10 of the top, 11 players on the board. Yeah, that trend is probably going to hit. Mm-hmm. Now, can you pinpoint which of the 10 is actually going to be that pick? It's a little bit more difficult. I mean, look, I'm not a draft expert by any means. I could not be bothered to learn the names of half these players until they're actually producing and functioning at the NFL level. Really, outside of like intrigue about where the quarterbacks are going, Bijan Robinson is a fun name just in terms of, you have the classic debate between obviously a very talented running back and then the age-old, do running backs matter in the NFL and draft resource philosophy? And I think it's interesting even that the Eagles are that high on the list of teams to get someone like Robinson. Despite the obvious need there, it just seems like Howie Roseman is not someone who is, at least in the past, ever shown willingness to use a high-end draft pick on the running back position. It kind of goes against what the Eagles' sort of philosophy as a team and ownership group is. I just think the quarterback stuff in this draft is always really interesting. You have a lot of people out there talking about the Texans and whether or not they can afford at this stage of their rebuild to pass on a quarterback. And, you have a lot of people also bringing up the point, if they do choose to pass on someone like a CJ Stroud, he could have the opportunity to haunt them 2 times a year by being drafted by the Colts or the Titans, sitting right behind them. But at the same time, if you're the Texans and you're evaluating these players and you don't feel like CJ Stroud is good enough to be the second overall pick, maybe you want CJ Stroud being drafted by one of your rivals in your division because you don't think that highly of them. I just think this quarterback class and drafts that have at least perceived very strong quarterback classes are always the most interesting drafts because those are the kind of drafts where teams give up serious draft capital to move up and try to get their guy. And those are the trades that we talk about 10 years down the line. Like we're still talking about the amount of draft picks that Washington had to give up for Robert Griffin. Like these are the trades that stand the test of time. And that's the really interesting part of draft night to me is when you have those really, really strong quarterback classes.
Well, a team that will not be taking a quarterback unless, of course, it is dumb is the Baltimore Ravens. Because if anybody missed it, Lamar Jackson, long-term, re-upping with the Ravens. It is official. It's all over Twitter. $260 million is the report. 185, not the full 260, 185 guaranteed. But of course, the total number is more than that of Jalen Hurts. So I guess, Lamar gets the last laugh there. I will credit the organization and player for keeping it mostly quiet until they were ready to announce it. All the news from Lamar, from the team, from the reporters, it all more or less broke at the same time. So good on them. I guess what frankly, guys, kind of pisses me off. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but all of these tweets that I have been seeing since from the Rappaport, is a video from the Ravens of Lamar in his uniform and a video of what's to come. And Rappaport quote tweets it and writes surreal and all these. I can't believe this. Again, maybe I'm the idiot. I never, Jeff, thought for a minute that he was leaving Baltimore. I'm not saying that I expected him to sign a long-term deal this offseason. I figured not exclusive, 1 year, he's back there. He will be a Raven again next season and maybe kick the can down the road. But in terms of him actually getting dealt and all the who's the likely team to land him, will he be a Patriot? Will he go to, X, Y, and Z? I never thought it was going to happen. I never put any credence into it at all. To me, he was a Raven and only a Raven. So all of these people that are just mystified that this has happened, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I think that there was that 1 to 2 day period when the Ravens placed the non-exclusive tag on him and that you said, okay, maybe something's going to work out. Maybe some team comes in and offers something crazy and Baltimore says, hey, we're just done with this. We'll take the 2 first-round picks and be done with it. And then those 2 days went on and we heard absolutely nothing. And at that point, it became pretty clear that, okay, there's no market for Lamar Jackson outside of Baltimore. And
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we didn't even hear nothing. Before the pen was even drying on the paper in terms of the reporting, we heard Miami didn't want him. We heard Atlanta didn't want him. What we heard was teams going, nope, not going to do it.
And how about that? A guy that teams are actively coming out and saying, we don't want you, just became the highest paid player in NFL history. So that is, props to Lamar Jackson. He's been betting on himself for the entirety of his career. Obviously, very interesting choice, not hiring an agent with these negotiations. A lot of people question that after he turned down that Ravens offer from a few months ago. But, he figured it out. He got the last laugh, like you were just saying, Adam, $260 million. Highest paid player ever. Obviously, the guarantees weren't fully there, and we know that he wanted a fully guaranteed deal. It became pretty apparent after the Jalen Hurts contract that wasn't going to happen. But all things considered, he did very well for himself, so props to him.
Garion, I think one of the first things that you wrote in our chat was that, after all that, he doesn't go anywhere. Did you think he would?
Not really. I mean, look, this has always been a bit of a complex situation. Depending on how deep you want to dig into it and how much credence you want to give to or skepticism you have about maybe the owners and their relationship with the NFLPA and et cetera, et cetera. I think we've talked about this quite a bit, even just bringing up the Jalen Hurts contract for a second, just how important precedent-setting contracts positionally are in the NFL. So Jalen Hurts signs that contract, and that now becomes the contract with which all other quarterback contracts are measured against. Now this Lamar Jackson contract is that contract. But the prior contract that Lamar Jackson was being held against was obviously not just the contract, but the trade of Deshaun Watson. And whether or not the league was operating in good faith about, as you said, Koff, all these teams immediately coming out and saying they would not give Lamar Jackson guaranteed money. And how much of that was the league trying to backtrack against these quarterbacks getting fully guaranteed contracts? Because, you know, 1 or 2, that's a blip on the radar. But if Lamar Jackson gets it, suddenly every quarterback is going to be getting a guaranteed contract. So I don't know. There's benchmarks here. There's some skepticism here. It's all very strange. I would say to your point about like these NFL talking heads coming out being like, oh my God, I'm mystified by all this. Like, again, they're just selling the league. It's no different than these NBA reporters quote tweeting.
There you go.
Hashtag this league after like every single thing that happens in the NBA. Like, they're paid to promote the league. That's basically what's happening here. But I think the fact that he got, I think, $185 million guaranteed. Kyler got $160 million guaranteed. So maybe the full contract wasn't guaranteed, but he's at least surpassing Kyler. And if we're not counting Deshaun, if that contract is no longer allowed to even be thought of in this realm, if we're just hunting it from the face of the earth, as the NFL owners want us to do, that means Lamar now has the most guaranteed money. So that's, in a way, he kind of got what he wanted if what he actually wanted was impossible.
And what a perfect guy to just get the best contract ever that we decide to forget all about. I mean, well-deserved, well-earned.
Yeah. I mean, again, the Browns, just a real great organization. They hit every shot they take, they hit.
Just like last night in Cleveland, right?
Yeah. Great sports city. Just the best luck. Look, it's just a weird situation. I think, again, in a vacuum, every team would, not every team, but most teams would want a chance to get Lamar Jackson. I just think the circumstances of this were really strange. The fact that even if they had negotiated a contract with all this guaranteed money, which no owner wanted to give him, and on top of that, they were going to have to give up 2 first-round draft picks. Like, it was just all working against Lamar. Like, the system was set up to have him fail in this circumstance. So I am glad for him that he finally got what he wanted. I think this creates like a crazy dynamic in the AFC where, God, you could say there are, independent of Jalen Hurts, and I still don't even know if I would have Jalen Hurts as like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's almost there. But you could honestly say the 6 best quarterbacks in football are in the AFC. You could say 13, like maybe 11 of the top 15, maybe 12 of the top 15 are in the AFC. It's just ridiculous depth right now. And that's probably why we didn't see really the Ravens odds adjust all that much. I mean, partly because, as we've been outlining here, he was probably going to stay. That was more likely than not.
Right.
But, you know, even now you have Lamar Jackson, and I know they signed Odell Beckham. I know there's a lot of rumors in the last half hour that, like, now that this is locked into place for the Ravens, maybe they can be really aggressive with some of their draft capital tonight and try to go out and get a DeAndre Hopkins, which would obviously change the dynamic of this team because they've been missing just any talent at the wide receiver position for the last half decade. But it's hard to compete in the AFC. There's just so much talent at the most important position on the field.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens right now, and we could show you too, but plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl. That puts them tied for 9th. But let's see, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 6-way tie for 9th. You have to assume if that actually were to happen, I don't know if it will, but if they were to trade for DeAndre Hopkins, you vaulting them ahead of the Jets at that point? You moving them all the way up into the top 6?
I mean, a receiver's not going to change it that much.
Yeah.
And also, what's working against them?
I just don't happen to believe the Jets should be that high. So that's probably part of me coming at that.
Sure.
But you're certainly moving them. You know, you're moving them ahead. So you're moving them ahead of the plus 2,500. So you're putting them maybe in the top 8 anyway. Yeah, you're
20 to 1, 22 to 1. They're probably in a category of their own if they trade for DeAndre Hopkins.
It's possible. It's weird just because with the Ravens too, it's they've locked in Lamar now, but this is also a core that they haven't been able to win with consistently in the postseason yet. So until that happens, until that happens, how are we supposed to trust them to an extent? So even if these odds jump up a little bit, I am definitely hasty. And because the AFC is so stacked, you know, there's a solid chance they just don't even make the playoffs next season. That could happen. So they, despite locking their guy up, they still have a long way to go to building a competitive roster that can actually make a run in the postseason.
All right, we've got 10, maybe 15 minutes because there are no Madden Sims tonight with the NFL draft getting started. So we've got a little time to work with. Let's at least do NBA. And before we even talk about the one game tonight, you guys have both alluded to last night, and I gotta just, for the Cavs to, I bought in, not on them actually being a contender, but on going on a run. I never would have put money on them to win the championship, but I was convinced enough by Mitchell and company of the Cavs regular season that they were more than just a cute, fun story, that they'd show up, maybe win a round anyway in the playoffs and put up a fight in the second round before getting knocked out. That was kind of my view of the world of Cleveland. And to no show in such a way against the Knicks, who quite frankly, I don't, and this sort of it sort of curtails into the other series. With Milwaukee failing or not failing, Giannis, depends how you want to look at it, but losing obviously in convincing fashion the number one seed to the previous number one seed, the Miami Heat, going down in 5 games because Jimmy Butler just goes playoff Jimmy, goes scorched earth in the postseason, and showing up and doing what he does. I don't think that highly of the Knicks, let alone for them to have beaten Cleveland the way they did, and with Julius Randle either banged up or just plain inefficient in that series. And they're the favorites in this, upcoming round against Miami. I've already put money, guys, on Miami to win this series at plus money because I think Miami is a better team than the Knicks, and I think Jimmy is going to Jimmy. And no matter what Brunson does on the other side, or if Randall actually has a better matchup in this series, I'm shocked Milwaukee's out. I'm surprised Cleveland's out. There's no part of me that believes the Celtics aren't going to win in convincing fashion tonight after the dud that they laid in Game 5. And it just goes to show that Gary, and I'll start with you, the NBA in general, but the Eastern Conference specifically, is just so incredibly wide open right now, because not only is there not a dominant team, we haven't even seen a team play well so far in the playoffs.
I mean, I don't know if it's wide open or not wide open. I would think the Celtics at this point, if you're a Boston fan or a Boston supporter, you are ecstatic. I mean, you're at the point now where who's really competing with you in the Eastern Conference? I mean, Philadelphia.
Miami still scares the crap out of Celtics fans. There's Miami.
Look, I understand that, but in terms of
they've got to get there.
So I can
first,
speak. I can speak rationally. Miami still, I don't think, is a very good team. I mean, Jimmy Butler is fantastic, but the fact remains, Tyler Hero. I remember laughing at there's Ira. Very long time.
Yeah.
Heat beat reporter, tweeting out a couple days ago the timeline of Tyler Hero's possible return, and it was, he could be back by Game 2 of the NBA Finals, and I was like, what is this guy talking about? Like, you guys are going to lose the Bucks, and now who knows? But Miami without Hero, we're already talking about a team that was, I believe, 25th in offensive rating during the regular season. They shouldn't be able to score. And the fact that they were, I think, says more about maybe Milwaukee than it does about Miami. Look, that Heat Knicks series is going to be an absolute rock fight.
Yeah.
Julius Randle, I think you can buy into the fact that he wasn't at 100% health. Maybe he looks better in the second round as he sort of continues to recover from that injury. But, the Celtics gave Philadelphia a little extra time to get healthy. Not great. But Joel Embiid, history has shown us, cannot stay healthy for an entire playoff series. Maybe he already had his one injury in the first round, but there's a reasonable chance that he's just not going to be at 100% for any of these games. And I think the Celtics have pretty handily taken care of the 76ers for most of the season. I think that continues.
For years,
then
really.
they'll be left with a inferior opponent in the Eastern Conference Final. I think, to me, rightfully so, Boston's odds to win the finals have just shot up because of this Milwaukee news.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jeff, I was looking at, I could pull it up right here. All right, so minus 175 to win the East. I thought I saw it even minus 155 yesterday after, right after Milwaukee went down. So it's either way, a convincing betting favorite, not only to win the title at barely plus odds, but obviously at minus odds to win the Eastern Conference. I mean, is this going to be the layup of a postseason line that everybody wants to assume it will be for Boston? Or are we going to see more signs of what we saw in Game 5 where you just can't trust them?
I would hope that the Celtics are able to take advantage of this opportunity. My slight concern is that, as we saw in Game 5, they have not shaken what plagued them throughout the entirety of last postseason, which is when they are presented with an opportunity, they tend to squander it and make things much more difficult on themselves. I mean, I was in TD Garden for Game 6 against the in the Eastern Conference Finals against Miami last year, and I watched Jimmy Butler in a clinching scenario drop 45 points. So, Adam, yes, as you said, Celtics fans, there are some flashbacks for sure of this Miami Heat team and what they're capable of. In that Heat Knicks series, I think I'm a little higher on New York for sure, just because of their rebounding ability and what we saw them do to Cleveland. And hey, going into that matchup, we all said Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, no one's going to take them down on the boards. And the Knicks just absolutely dominated them on the glass. And as we saw with Miami in the play-in, for those of you who remember when they played Atlanta in that first game, now obviously they shot horribly, and I do expect them to regress a little bit to the mean. Obviously, they were incredible from behind the arc in that first round against Milwaukee, but they also got killed on the boards by Clint Capella and John Collins. So imagine what the Knicks are going to do, who are the best rebounding team in the NBA right now. Like, if Miami's not making their shots at the rate that they were against Milwaukee, they could lose in 5. They could lose in 4 in this one, just because we've seen the Knicks consistently be able to grind these matchups out. But then looking back to the Celtics, they've got to take care of business tonight. Obviously demoralized after that last performance. That being said, as I mentioned last year, when they squandered those opportunities, they tended to bounce back very effectively in games after that. So I would expect them to come out hot tonight. And then Philly, even if Joel Embiid is healthy, I mean, Celtics have just owned them consistently over the years, and I don't think much of the Sixers squad. It's just a matter of time.
Also a playoff choke artist, even
exactly. It's not even just it's Embiid. Doc Rivers, besides the 2008 finals, has a horrible track record in the postseason. James Harden is the biggest playoff choker we've seen consistently throughout the years in the league right now for superstars. I mean, that team is built to collapse, and it's coming at some point, and hopefully it's in that next round. But Boston is built to beat Philly. They've just got to focus on getting past Atlanta tonight. Then they can move forward to that matchup and feel pretty good heading into it.
But you guys would agree, like, if you are someone who still wants to buy in on the Celtics to win the title, because it might not even be plus money that much longer. I think it was what, plus 140? Wouldn't we just
something like that?
Yeah. Now's the time. Certainly.
Like, even if they lose tonight, there's no way they're losing Game 7 in Boston. So you shouldn't really be fearful to make that bet right now if that's something you do want to invest in.
Yeah. Also, this team, if look, I watched the Celtics. I mean, I watched the NBA in general, but I watched the Celtics more closely than anyone else. And if this team is who I think it is, it's going to be a blowout win tonight. Like, I mean, they should sail past covering by 7 points, because this is a team that lays down when there's an opportunity, as Jeff said, to make life easier on itself, and then responds to adversity just to shut everybody up. So this is a team that's going to go out in Atlanta, even though DeJounte Murray's back on the other side. I recognize that, and he's been troublesome when he's been available.
Shutting up. Who thinks this team's bad?
The haters, Garion. They exist.
Okay,
no,
but this is like the psychological games that they play with themselves. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying there's
you've got to make yourself an underdog.
Yeah, like believe me, I mean, they're like, you should see my Twitter mentions. There are enough people that are fire Joe Mazzulla. Celtics are going to choke away the series. They're a bunch of frauds because it's a reactionary fan base. But generally speaking, like Eamon, our producer's joking the whole, no one believed in us, like they hate us because they ain't us Patriots mentality. Like this is like the Celtics. This is what like New England teams do in our heads. All of us as fans.
The player James Franco, man.
Yeah, this is what happens, my man. But the Celtics are going. I would be shocked. I would be shocked, guys, if the Celtics don't go out and win this game by double digits. Like I was talking to. I won't name the person, but one of our coworkers. One of our coworkers. We were just talking about best ways to approach betting this game, and he was saying that he threw a whole bunch of money on Celtics minus 1.5 just because it was better than the juice with the money line, because it was like minus 250 versus minus 300 or something like that at the time. I see it's minus 285 on the money line right now, and I said they're going to blow them out. Like, why don't you just take half that money and get the same return by betting the spread? Like this is not going to be. It's not going to be a close game, Gary, and it's not.
I agree with you. And I know our colleague Julian Edlow, if you'd like to get another Celtics fans take on this game, if you haven't gotten enough.
Yeah.
I know he likes them with the spread for the first quarter and them with the spread for the first half. So similar thought process there. We're just a Boston team that tends to bounce back after adversity, after losses. I know their record coming back from losses up to the finals last season was really good. That they're going to come out hot. They're going to come out with a point to prove. And if they do, like, again, if you're worried about betting the spread, maybe you're thinking like backdoor cover from Atlanta. I mean, we have seen a lot of blown fourth quarter leads in these playoffs so far. Ask a Milwaukee fan. But if you're worried about maybe the backdoor stuff and maybe Boston taking their foot off the gas, first quarter, first half props might be.
Yeah, I'm just looking -2.5 for the first quarter, -4 for the, like, take my money. Honestly, just take it. You're going to be giving it back anyway.
Okay. Just so we can touch on the Atlanta side of this matchup a little bit for any Hawks fans who could be watching. Can we just go to the player assist column, real quick? I want to see if Trae Young is still plus money. Yes, he is at over 9.5. I feel very confident that he's going to hit that. 13 and 15 in his last 2 games. The one thing we know about the underdogs in these postseason is that these role players play much better in home situations. And we've seen that in this series so far, whether it's Bogdan Bogdanovic, whether it's John Collins, Sadiq Bey. Atlanta has a bunch of those guys who tend to show up at home compared to on the road in the Garden. And Trae has been sailing past this number. Quite frankly, I'm surprised. It was set at 10.5 going into last game. The guy racked up 13. I'm pretty surprised it's back down to 9.5 at plus money nonetheless. So if you're looking for a Hawks angle on this game, this is it. That's all I'll say on that side.
I just in the spirit of props, and then we will get out of here. I'll see if it's still plus money. I tweeted it out earlier today. It's not anymore, actually. Jason Tatum under 9.5 rebounds. It has moved to -110, but earlier today was well, let me look. Let's see. It was. I'm not surprised it's moved. It was a ridiculous number. Plus 105 at the time for him to go under 9.5 rebounds.
Look at you. Mass has only had betting for like a month. You're already out here moving lines.
See that? Yeah. 3 hours ago, I sent that tweet, Gary, and you got to tell the people. You got to let them know. Jump on this. This is where the money is. What else? Oh, yeah. Here's another one that I tweeted out. Okongwu, okay? Over 5.5 rebounds was plus 120 at the time. It is now plus 105.
That's all you.
It's all me. Thanks for listening, everybody. All right, parting thoughts before we leave, guys? Anything you'd like to add?
I've got something really quick. If you're listening through Twitter here on DK Live, stay tuned tomorrow. We could have a giveaway coming for the Sensational 6 parlays that Shirag here and I have been dropping. We'll be promoting that as well. If we had more time, I would have given you guys a sneak peek and walked you through some of the legs here to get Gary and Koff's thoughts. But stay tuned for that if you like bonus bets on DraftKings Sportsbook.
All right, beautiful. Thanks to Eamon. Thanks to Andrew as well for just making this look all nice, look and sound nice. Thanks to Jeff. Pleasure. This has been fun, man. Let's have you back more often, obviously, as the playoffs continue. And Gary, and we'll be kids in candy stores watching the NFL draft round 1 tonight and seeing what happens. But we know there's not going to be any Lamar Jackson trade, and just the fact that the rumors have been taken away makes me a little bit sad. I wish they could have waited until tomorrow to sign that deal. Okay, see you later.